"We need to rename this house for you and David," Charlotte exclaimed, her voice as light as the wind, but every word like a knife cut through the silence in the room. "I don't need to worry about finances anymore. We'll take care of everything." Her eyes suddenly flashed with a flash of calculation. At that moment, I knew. I couldn't be silent any longer. "My name is Alice Bennett, 65 years old, and I have been a middle school teacher for nearly 40 years at a public school in the suburbs. I retired early after my husband Henry, a former road and bridge engineer, died of lung cancer. I am a quiet, calm woman who has never been used to arguing. My hair was white, slightly curled, and I always pulled it behind my ears, tied it up with an ash-gray cloth band. My face was gentle, but I couldn't hide the deep wrinkles around my eyes, the traces of many years of teaching, raising children, and taking care of my family. I dressed casually, a beige round-neck sweater, soft fabric pants, flat shoes, and often a thin ash-blue silk shawl, last birthday gift Henry gave me. My family is not large, but there are enough people to make an old woman like me feel like a superfluous person. I have 2 sons. The adult, named Andrew, who worked as a banker in Australia, rarely called, but every time he came home, he hugged me like a child. The younger guy was David, the one who lived close by, who took care of me with his schedule. I mean, Mom has breakfast at 7 o'clock, takes medicine at 8 o'clock, and avoids calling you after 9 p.m. because that's when you and your husband go to the movies. David was a quiet boy, just like his father. Since childhood, he has been tolerant, obedient, and rarely speaks out loud. He studied well, graduated from school with a good job, and married his wife at the age of 35 late. But well, I used to think David was a filial child. Maybe in my heart, he was still a 10-year-old boy who sat up late at night doing math and then ran out and asked me, "Mom, how much is 9x7? But the David of the present is a man who always asks his wife for his opinion before telling his mother something, whether it's going to dinner or changing the curtains in my room. And then there's Charlotte. Charlotte is the kind of person you'll find likable at first. She has a big smile, knows how to converse, and always wears clothes that make it difficult for others to take their eyes off. When David brought Charlotte home to make his debut, I couldn't hate it. She was as fresh as the sun, spoke tactfully, and didn't forget to bring a box of homemade cakes. She called me Mom very naturally, as if she was used to it from a previous life. I used to be happy. Honestly, getting married is different. Charlotte manages the finances of the house, like many modern wives. She controls my spending schedule, makes investment plans, and manages my medical schedule. "You should take your blood pressure medication at 9 o'clock. Close. If you don't remember, let your child set the alarm for you." I nodded. I always nodded. But I'm not used to being reminded like an elementary school student. She called me Mom, but that mom sounded like a polite noun. In Charlotte's eyes, I saw no warmth. Only the calculation is seen. Once I accidentally broke their wedding crystal glass, and she still laughed. "It's okay, Mom. I know you're weak." But that very afternoon, I heard her whisper to David in the kitchen. "I didn't say anything, but your mother kept breaking it. Be careful not to be skillful in the future. My house also." Her last sentence was absent, but I heard enough. Charlotte is the type of woman who won't scold you in front of you. She spoke softly, but every word made a small incision, light as a hair, but deeply cut. I started to find myself walking into a play where she was the lead actor and I was just the backdrop. Once, I made an egg stew that David had loved since he was a child. I prepared for the whole day, but when it was time to eat, Charlotte said, "Mom, I've already cooked it, and I'll make it for you another day." She pushed my pot into the fridge and put some quinoa salad on the table. David didn't say anything. He just glanced at me, then bent down to eat as if no braised meat had ever existed. I looked down at the bowl of white rice. No one asked me what I wanted to eat. I picked up some vegetables for myself, some cold chicken, and sat down to eat while the conversation at the top of the table was full of laughter and stories about the stock market, summer vacations, and old classmates who just bought a 20 billion house in District 2. I remember being consulted. I remember once David called me and asked, "Mom, should I wear a blue shirt or a white shirt to meet customers today?" Those calls are now gone, even if I live in the same house as him. As for Charlotte, she is very good at playing the role of a gentle bride. Every time a stranger came, she held my hand and smiled. My mother-in-law is so cute, gentle, and also cooks deliciously. But after the door closed, that fist never returned. That evening, I cleared the table as usual. The chair I was sitting in was still at the end of the table, a little loose because a leg had been broken, and no one cared to fix it. I wiped my hands with a towel and stepped out onto the balcony to breathe some air. It was a cool March day, with a faint smell of milkweed, and I felt so small. This house, which my husband and I had chosen to buy since David was a child, is now full of laughter. Not for me. Maybe I'm too used to being seen as a piece of furniture there. No disturbance, no sound, and no care. But that very night, there was a small detail that woke me up. Charlotte walked across the living room, the phone clipped in her ear, and her voice whispered but clearly, "Yes, this house is still in her name," trying to persuade to change the name for safety. But if she flips the rafters, she will be tired. I sat behind the open door, the glass of water still warm in my hand. I know, I understand, and I didn't feel cold anymore. Once I bought a small purple orchid pot to worship my grandfather. Charlotte saw it and said softly, "Mom, purple orchids are not suitable for feng shui. Also, that place doesn't look pretty. Let me take it out on the porch for air." She didn't ask me if I wanted to. Just let me do it, then do it. Everything in the house now has to go through Charlotte approval. From the fish sauce I use to store fish, to the photo I hang in my room. She convinced David that my elderly mother needed a clean, simple, non-stimulating environment. So I wasn't allowed to hang old photos, not to keep the old items I had kept since I was a child. I was going to speak. I wanted to speak. But David always chooses to stand in the middle. He said, "I sympathize with Charlotte. She wants to be good to me." And I nodded again, because I didn't want to disturb him. Gradually, I stopped appearing in Charlotte's Facebook family photos. There were only 3 of us on family trips: David, Charlotte, and little Miami granddaughter. I was still invited, but it was always an invitation that came after the tickets were sold out. Or the doctor told me not to go much. I am no longer a mother. I became a person who should know things. An item must be carefully preserved but not very revealing, because it doesn't look good. Once, Charlotte said to David in front of me, "If our house is transferred to my husband and wife, it will be easier for us to manage anything in the future. But leaving my mother's name all the time, missing my mother." Another sentence. "But everyone understands." I was silent. It's not that I don't understand. It's because I'm waiting at the right time. Because there is one thing they don't know. This house, and all that I have ever given up, is still in my name. And I have never forgotten. It's just that I'm quietly observe. Last June, my family was preparing to go on summer vacation. Charlotte has long cherished the 3 generations trip to New Zealand, a dream she often tells her friends online, accompanied by collectible photos of luxury resorts, the snowy mountains of Queenstown, and Marlborough wines. She told David that a luxurious but unflinching vacation would bring the whole family together, helping baby Mia have calm childhood memories. She said that I must go, so much so that I began to believe that this time would be different. I even went to make a passport again. I put my sweater in my suitcase and picked out the warmest socks. All week, I waited for the day when I could get on the plane with my children and grandchildren to enter a land I had only seen in pictures on the calendar. 3 days before the flight, I saw Charlotte go shopping with 3 brand new, branded cream suitcases. Each one has an embroidered name on the side. Charlotte, David, Mia. I asked, "What about you?" Charlotte laughed. "Mom used an old suitcase to help with the expenses. I don't go much." I didn't say anything. I just swiped the lock of the silver blue suitcase, the suitcase I had taken on my honeymoon with my husband in 1982. The night before the trip, Charlotte walked into my room, softly, as if she was about to announce something sad. "Mom, my ticket was wrong when I booked, and now there is no room." "Mom, don't be sad." I asked again, "What's wrong with running out of space? You were the first person you said you would book a ticket?" She dodged the gaze. "I thought there was, but I didn't expect the company to publish it. But don't worry, stay at home and rest. We'll only be gone for a week." Then she left the room. That night, I lay down with the suitcase unclosed, still open, as a question. They flew the next morning. I saw him off at the door. David hugged me superficially. Mia kissed me on the cheek and asked, "Grandma, why don't you go with us?" Charlotte interjected as fast as lightning. "She prefers to stay at home and take care of the plants, daughter." I don't blame Mia. She didn't understand. But I saw David's gaze, avoiding Minia's, if he knew something wasn't. I went back to the living room. Turn on the television. A program about tourism appeared with a view of the Blue Lake Tekapo. I sighed. But then there was the doorbell. "He is a postal worker at HSBC." I opened a small envelope containing a gold-grade credit card statement. But the strange thing is, I have never registered to open a card abroad. I looked down at the matte paper. There are 3 major deals in New Zealand. Business class, international airfare, USD 5,200. Hotel booking in Queenstown, $3,900. Helicopter tour and dinner at the vineyard, 1,800 USD. The cardholder's name? Alice H. Bennett. It's me. I was dumbfounded. I didn't know Charlotte was using my name to open an international supplementary credit card. I don't know how she got around the system, but what I do know was all I thought they were paying for themselves. It turned out to be on my shoulders. I called the bank. A polite lady confirmed. "Yes, Mrs. Bennett. The secondary card has been activated and used by the authorized person named Charlotte Holloway." I hung up. The house became cold. I turned on the heater, not because of the weather. It was because I began to feel cold in my body. Cold because of being taken advantage of. Cold because of being left behind. But it's also cold, as if there's something in me. Our awakening. Part of me wanted to call David right away. Want to scream. But I didn't. Instead, I sat down. Opened the old drawer. Pulled out a faded business card. Edward Chambers, estate and wills attorney. My husband's best friend, who used to help us with all the procedures when buying this house. I dialed the phone number. The bell rang 3 times. "Hi, I'm Ed Chambers. Who's calling?" I smiled, even though my lips were trembling. "Hi, Ed, Alice Bennett. I think it's time. I need to know what I have left." On the other side, he was silent for a few seconds, and then replied, "I still have your records. And I think you should come to see me soon. There are a few things she should know." I hung up the phone, but my heart couldn't put it away. The anger in me was not noisy. It was quiet. It's planned. And it's getting started. 3 days after calling attorney Ed Chambers, I received a courier letter from the bank with a cream-colored envelope embossed with the logo. The letter confirmed that I was the primary account holder of a series of passbooks, bonds, and trust stock, total estimated value of nearly $1.4 million, including a portfolio of real estate stocks that I owned. I don't remember my name at all. Everything is starting to show up. As it turns out, my husband, Mr. Harold, before he died, transferred many of his assets into trusts in my name. He once said, "You don't need to know everything. You just need to be sure. If you are no longer there, you will still be respected." I think it's the consolation of a husband who loves his wife. But now I understand. It's a real promise. The attached bank records detail properties in Sydney's suburbs, some remaining stakes in his former construction company, and also his micro-investments in tech startups he invested in retirement. I sat in the middle of the table, reading every line of the letter, and found myself like a stranger living in my own life. The assets I thought had passed into my son's hands turned out to still be in my name, and I was deceived. Not to appropriate, but for me to voluntarily give up the rights I have. That afternoon, when David and Charlotte came home from a long vacation, I was still sitting at the table as usual. I didn't say anything right away. I want to see if they tell me. Charlotte hugged Mia into the house, chirping about the weather on the other side, the lovely kiwi birds, and the great wine. She said, "It's a pity that you didn't come with us. It's indescribably beautiful over there, but we've bought a gift for you." She handed me an ash-gray shawl. Label outlets. I thanked him, put it on my lap, and didn't bother to open it. David poured the water, then looked around as if to ask something. How are you at home? Is it all right?" I looked into his eyes for so long that he turned away. Then I smiled. "All right." Mom was only a little surprised when she saw the bank bill. Both of them paused. Charlotte put the glass down a little hard, causing the water to spill over the rim of the glass. David asked again, his voice trying to keep his composure. "What bill?" I took in my pocket the envelope that the bank sent me and put it on the table. Very gentle. "But I know." The sound echoed in their heads like a bang. Charlotte glanced over and smiled wryly. "Well, I guess it's because I'm not used to the new services." "Let me see," I interrupted, still in a voice as light as dew. "No need. Mom has already called the bank." They confirmed. "The authorized person is the child, Charlotte Holloway." No one said anything. No coughing. No sound of wind. I continued. And I saw Edward's lawyer again. He showed me the file that our father had left behind. It seems like not everything belongs to the two of them, as I once thought. Charlotte stood up, but David pulled her hand back. Then he looked at me, his eyes blinking rapidly. "Mother, what are you going to do?" I smiled, a calm but steely smile. "I don't plan to do anything yet, but I thought it was time for me to know everything in this house. Comprise. Who really deserves to be trusted by my mother?" I stood up, leaving the envelope on the table. Charlotte said to him, his voice stiffening, "If you want to make a big deal, you have to think about your grandson. Mom did that. Mia will hurt." I stopped in the doorway of the living room, without turning my head. Yes, I don't want you to be hurt. But she also didn't want her to grow up and learn to treat her grandmother like an uncle. I left the room. I don't need to scream. No counterfire is needed. Because I know silence at the right time is the most powerful way to counterattack. And that day's talk, though interrupted by a stifling silence, was the first time in a long time that I felt like I was leading the story. The next day, I went to the office of lawyer Ed Chambers, located in a low-rise red brick building, about a 40-minute drive from downtown. There was no flashy sign, just a small bronze sign that had faded over the years. Chambers and Associates, Legal and Probate Counsel. I arrived on a gloomy morning. The wind was blowing, and the sound of my shoes echoed every beat on the old wooden floor. In contrast to the cold out there, his room was still the same as it was when my husband was alive, warm, discreet, and the smell of pine wood, mixed with the smell of old paper, made me feel like I had just stepped into an old memory. Alice, is it really you? Ed stood up to meet me, his hand still holding the pen he was writing. It's me, Ed. I think it's time. I need to know all that Harold left me. He nodded, without asking any more questions. Then he pulled out a metal cabinet and searched through the chronological files. After a while, he pulled out a light blue file cover on which my name was handwritten. Alice H. Bennett, Personal Property Record. Harold was careful. He kept every original, every receipt, every small piece of paper related to the common property. But the special thing is, Ed looked up at me. Most of the property is in her name alone. I frowned. I thought everything had changed to David's name? Nope. Harold left a private will, which he did not share with his children. He wanted her to have full authority to handle it after she died. I looked at the notebook that Ed had placed in front of me. A long list of investments, real estate, shares, a lakeside vacation home in Canada, a small stake in a fast-growing construction company in Melbourne, and especially, the house I currently live in with David and Charlotte is still legally owned by me, without any kind of transfer. I exhaled, very lightly. But in his heart, there was a silent shock. I remember one evening many years ago, when my husband said to me over a glass of red wine, "You don't need to do anything. Just keep the papers carefully. If one day you feel belittled, remember, you're not as small as they think." Back then, I laughed. I thought he was joking. Ed continued. In addition, Harold made a memorandum that these assets may not be used as collateral or transferred without her direct consent. I sat in silence. Every sentence and every word of his is like a breeze through the painful crevices in my heart. But strangely, I didn't feel angry. I see elegantly slender, because in the end, I'm not as blind as they think. Ed, I have a request. I looked up, my voice calm. I want to keep this quiet for a while, but I need you to prepare a document to declare your assets. And I want to transfer part of the asset to a reserved form. Ed raised his eyebrows. What are you going to do? I smiled slightly, my eyes looking out the frosted glass doorway. I don't take revenge. I just want them to know. My silence for many years, not because I was weak. Ed nodded slowly. You want to keep your power? No, Ed. I want them to look at themselves. On the way back, I was not in a hurry. I stopped by a small shop on the side of the road, ordered a cup of hot tea, and sat and watched people pass by. Suddenly, I felt that I was no longer an old mother sitting in the chair at the end of the table. I am a woman with a choice. There is a voice. There is a fact. And I knew very well that the next time Charlotte sat down at the dinner table and said nice words, I wouldn't smile anymore. I'll look her in the eye, because this time, I have a weapon, the truth. And the truth always has a way to speak out, no matter how long it's been hidden. I arrived home when the sun had just gone out, and the pale yellow light at the end of the day fell through the curtains like a gentle reminder. It was time for me to look at everything, not to shy away, not to delay. That 3-story house with a wide porch where my teenage sons used to laugh, where Harold and I used to argue over the color of the curtains, and where I sat for hours folding clothes when my husband was alive turned out, is still in my name. And that's not all. What I thought I had given up, because I thought my children needed to be more stable, had never been transferred. Ed Chambers was right. My husband protected me by carefully putting every clause in every document, terms that, until today, I really understand the meaning. I have full ownership of this house, can be sold, can be rented, can get the whole thing back at any time. And that's just a small part of the long list that Ed gave me this morning. The resort villa in Canada, still in my name, no one in the house knew about it. A 15% stake in the construction company is now redeveloping the Sydney Expressway my name. 2 large savings books and a long-term investment in an international education fund for my grandchildren are, all at my discretion. The first feeling of knowing it all? Not power. It is not a victory. Rather, value. I've never asked for much. For decades as a wife and mother, I have chosen a background role. Not because I am weak, but because I believe that love is sacrifice. But that loveth, there is only one side to hold it, sooner or later, are also rotten. And I was rotten. Silently. Until today, I walked into the kitchen, where Charlotte was arranging flowers. The white glass branches were cleverly arranged by her into the newly purchased crystal jar. She turned around, a little surprised to see me. "Mom is back? Do you use tea? I just made my favorite chrysanthemum." I smiled, not answering right away. I looked her in the eye for the first time in years. Not evasive, not afraid. "Thanks, but I have something to say. Private, only mother and child." Charlotte paused. His hands were still holding the flower branches in the air. "Yes. What's going on?" I pulled down my chair, opened my bag, and placed a file on the table. Light blue cover, carefully attached with copper tongs. "This is a copy of the house papers. This house is still in my mother's name. My mother has never changed her name. And he has never authorized anyone." The air in the room suddenly became thick. Charlotte smiled, trying to keep her composure. "That's what Mother said. What's wrong?" I nodded slowly, my voice frighteningly calm. "That is, from today onwards, I will reconsider continuing to live here, for those who do not see their mother as part of the family." Charlotte put down the glass branch, put her hands on the table, and tapped her fingers lightly. "Are you threatening me?" I raised my eyebrows. "No, I'm just taking back what belongs to me. And, if you see it as a threat, perhaps, you should reflect on your own actions." She was silent, lips pursed tightly. I continued. "Well, I also checked my recent expenses via credit card, the whole trip to New Zealand, the whole luxury hotel, all in my mother's name." Charlotte suddenly stood up, the chair dragging on the floor with a shrill sound. "What do you want?" I stood up, slowly. "I don't want anything. I just need the truth to be clear. I will not be silent anymore. And I won't sign anything. Unless I really want to." She stiffened her throat. Without David at home, Charlotte didn't know how to manage. For many years, she has been accustomed to playing the role of a good daughter-in-law in front of others and a person in power behind her husband's back. But this time, I'm no longer a shadow. I turned away from the kitchen. Then I heard Charlotte call quietly behind me, as if someone was trying to grasp something that was about to slip away. "Mother, if you don't believe me, then this family will no longer be at peace." I didn't turn around. I just said, "I'm wrong. Peace does not come from pretending to love." And I know, from that moment on, the balance has changed. No need to shout, no need for revenge. Just, the truth is illuminated in my hands. Mia's 6th birthday party was held at a luxurious restaurant by the river. The banquet room was covered in pale pink tones and warm yellow lights, full of balloons, fresh flowers, and large printed photos of Mia from her childhood until now. Everything was as neat as a miniature wedding party. Charlotte chose a tight-fitting champagne silk dress, her hair in a high bun, and a small flower behind her ears. She walked between the tables, smiling brightly, holding a wine glass in her hand like a queen of reception. David was busy tuning the speakers, checking the cake list and background music. I was arranged to sit at a table on the edge, next to the door leading to the rooftop. The table was reserved for only 3 old people: me, Charlotte's grandmother, and a distant cousin. No one asked me where I wanted to sit. No one invited me to stand up and speak like last year. I don't mind, because I'm used to it. And this time, I waited. The party was having fun, Everyone was eating, drinking, and laughing when Charlotte walked up to my table, her mouth still smiling politely, but her voice was very low. "Mom, I have something I want to discuss. Just a little bit." I nodded. Charlotte pulled me to the corner of the staircase that led to the mezzanine, where few people passed. "How do you think the party is today? Are you okay?" she began, her voice as sweet as sugar cane receding. "Very beautiful. Luxurious, too, but a little lacking in the flan that my mother often makes." I smiled, my eyes fixed on her. Charlotte smiled stiffly and then quickly changed the subject. "Ah, I was going to talk to my mother about the house." I was silent. "We are planning to renovate the house, change the interior of the ground floor into an open space. But the problem is, the house is still in my mother's name. I think if you change the name to you and David, it will be more convenient. In terms of paperwork, bank loans if necessary, or reinvestment." I didn't say anything. Charlotte continued, this time in a more pleading voice. "Actually, we don't mean anything. It's just, thinking about the future, if something unexpected happens, we will be passive. Do you understand?" I raised my eyebrows. "Do you want me to watch out for the unexpected by giving away all the assets I own?" Charlotte hurriedly said. "No, it's not. I just want you to rest assured. The papers are in my name. I can still stay. Everything is still mine." I sighed slightly. I didn't feel angry in my head, only pity to the self of previous years who had believed in such gentle words. I looked Charlotte in the eye. "Charlotte, I know you're smart, and I also know that you are worried. But Mother is not a child who needs to be protected. This house, and many other things, it was made by our mother and father. If you really care about you, then what you need to do, not asking for the name of the house. But don't make your mother feel left out." She blushed slightly. For the first time, I saw Charlotte's eyes not dodge, but tense, as if she had just been exposed. She insisted, "I only think of the common good. If you don't want to, then that's it." I nodded, turned my back and walked away. But before I walked down the first step, I said without turning around, "If you really don't want to, I think you should." From before. I went back to the table, just as everyone started singing happy birthday. The cake was pushed out in the middle of the room, and the candles lit up shimmeringly. David took the microphone and called everyone to stand closer. Charlotte turned behind me and had time to smile again. She hugged Mia from behind her back and said loudly, "Grandma Alice has any special wishes for little Mia today?" I stepped forward. The whole room was silent. The lights dimmed. Everyone's eyes fell on me. I picked up the microphone and slowly, "You have only one wish, as her granddaughter will grow up in a house where love, without conditions, and kindness, not used to conceal the calculation." I put the microphone down. For a moment, the music was forgotten, and Charlotte's eyes blazing. Not anger, but fear. For the first time, I saw she was afraid of me. The party continued with laughter all around, but I felt like I was standing in the middle of a quiet space. All sounds seemed to be echoing in my ears in a vague way, and the light from the chandeliers swayed, like rays of truth that were obscured by the mist of lies. Mia was happily running around in a white flared dress, her small arms spread out as if she was playing with the air. The whole crowd at the table was still laughing and joking, despite what had just happened. But my heart was no longer at peace. Charlotte was standing to the side, continuing to smile as if everything was fine. But I know, those smiles are now just a cover. And I understood. Now it was time for me to stand up. I can't continue to be as silent as I have been for so many years. I couldn't keep giving up when they tried to force me back. Because I am a mother, and I deserve respect. I stood up. There was no warning sign, a firm footstep. Everyone turned to look at me, surprised. David was talking to a friend, but his gaze quickly swept over me, and then he moved away in a hurry. Charlotte also turned around, looking at me calmly, but there was a palpable tension in her eyes. She knew. She knew that I was no longer the one who would bow her head easily. I held the glass of red wine, shook it lightly so that the glass of clear water spread red light. Slowly, I said. The voice was enough for everyone to hear. I have a word to say, not only for their children and grandchildren, but also for this whole family. Everyone was silent. The forks and knives stopped in midair, and the chatter died out. I could feel the tension in the air. All eyes were on me. David opened his mouth to say something, but I spoke first. For so many years, I've been silent. I let myself become invisible in this very house. But today, I want all of my children to know one thing. I'm not a useless person. I put down my glass, my eyes not leaving Charlotte, who was standing there with a fake expression, but her eyes couldn't hide her worry. She didn't dare to look at me anymore. This house, as you know, is still in my name, and no one, whether a son or daughter-in-law, has the right to touch it without my consent. I paused for a moment to let the air calm down. My words were like a stone thrown on the surface of the lake, raising big waves in everyone's hearts. I saw the change in each person's eyes, from confusion, surprise, to a hint of fear. If you think I don't know what's going on in this house, you're wrong. I'm not someone who is easily dismissed, and if someone thinks they might be cheating on me, today, I want them to know that my mother is a strong person. Charlotte took a deep breath, her hands clenched. I saw that she wanted to criticize, but she couldn't. She couldn't because everything she said was seen through by me. I don't need you to take care of me. I don't need you to protect me. I just need respect. And I want you to learn to be respectful. I didn't look back at Charlotte anymore. I turned my back and walked towards the door. But before leaving, I turned around again. I don't need to be loved this way. I just need to be respected. And I will not continue to be silent. She lived long enough to know how much she was worth. I opened the door, walked out, and didn't look back. The party was blooming in the background, but I found what I needed, the truth. No one said anything after me, but as I walked out to the gate, I felt a change in the air. I don't need to look back to know that everything in my family will never be the same again, and I, no longer a resigned mother. The door closed gently behind me, but my heart was not heavy. That feeling, the feeling of going outside, stepping into a space where I didn't have to step back, was a feeling of freedom that I never thought I'd feel. For the first time in many years, I didn't feel constrained. I didn't feel guilty. But it was always in my mind every time I had to give in. Stepping out of this house, I was not in a hurry. The sky has turned blue and black of the evening. Everything around me was silent, but full of life. Perhaps, after so many years of living among the voices echoing from the house, I can now really hear my own voice. I don't know where I'm going. A street corner, a small house, or simply a cafe to sit quietly and take a deep breath. But the important thing is that I go, and I don't have to go back anymore. I don't need to prove anything. What I did very moment I lived had its own meaning. The whole family stayed together at the party, but the noise couldn't fill the void I had left. They will come back to fake chats, wry smiles, but in the silence behind my steps, they will have to face the truth they have been trying to hide for so long. I am not a useless person. I am not someone who has to endure in silence. I don't need to take revenge. I don't have to smash everything. I just need to walk. And when I go, I bring with me both the serenity and the freedom I deserve. David will realize that I am not a shadow for him to ignore, as something old and worthless. Charlotte will understand that not everyone is easily deceived, and not everyone is willing to stand by and watch others change everything for personal gain. I don't have to stay to see those changes. My feelings are enough now. The rest of them, they will have to live with what they have done. In my heart, I knew that I had made the right choice. Not because I was given back power or respect. It's because I've regained myself. And when I look back, everything inside me has changed, not because I won, but because I have accepted myself. No more fear, no more backing down. The past few years have taught me one thing. When we know our own worth, no one can hurt us anymore. Sometimes, stepping back is the most powerful. And I, today, passed away peacefully. They stayed with shame, but I went to find peace for myself.